Steven Morell, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation. We're going to be talking about sales and engineering, right? Two topics
Yes.
that it seems kind of counterintuitive to be talking about the two concepts at the same time, but you blend them like no one does, right? And so I want to hear your story, how you got to where you are today. But let's start by explaining a little bit to the audience about you, right? Who is Steven? What do you do today? And how do you make a living?
So I think first we need to get the elephant out of the room. One of the reasons why I'm so excited is because I'm a big fan of your podcast, but you are located in Montevideo.
Yes.
And Montevideo, capital of Uruguay, South America, is not only one of my favorite spots, is also a place I call home because I lived there for over 8 years. And it's like I'm virtually visiting a very, very dear and loved place on the other side of the planet. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be here today. It's nice to be home again. Well, who is Steven? What does Steven do? I probably try to figure that question out every morning while I brush my teeth. But I like to say I had a non-linear linear biography. I did study macroeconomics, so I have an understanding of markets. But I used to be a software developer. And then I switched sites and became a salesperson because I had to sell the stuff that I programmed. And I came into the sales world many years ago with a programmer mindset. There's an input, there's an output. Oh, okay, I can probably hack this. If I can manipulate the inputs, I can manipulate the outputs. And this, I always had this engineering mindset around programming, of course, and sales. And over the years, I was always obsessed with optimizing my sales processes. And I'm a terribly lazy person, so I don't like to repeat things. So I always was about how can I automate this? How can I scale this? But there is a catch. If your processes have a certain error rate that you might not be aware of, then when you scale, what you're scaling failure.
Right.
And that's pretty dangerous. And I think a lot of the listeners can relate to this. You find something that works, and then you decide, oh, great, it works. Let's do more of this. And suddenly you figure out, 12 months later, you figure out, just hiring more salespeople and increasing ad spend didn't just pan out somehow. So I was always around about this. Let's build a machine. Let's figure out how we can scale this. And then life led me into, the world of winning by design. I owe a great lot to Jaco and his thinking and his data and math model that influenced me heavily. And from there, I wandered off into the world of quality engineering. And this is what I'm doing today. I'm running a startup called Jax AI. And what we do is we reduce variations in the sales process. And I think we're going to get to talk about this a little bit more. If you reduce variations in your process, then you get more predictable results, less errors. And with more predictable results and less errors, you can more successfully scale whatever it is that you do. Very abstract saying. I have recently tried to explain this to somebody who is not from that field, and I said, look, whenever I go to McDonald's and I order a Big Mac, I somehow always get the same sandwich. No matter where I am in the world, I'll always get the same sandwich. This is amazing. It's so standardized. The Economist has even the Big Mac index. It's such a standardized product that they compare living costs by the price of a Big Mac in 100 different countries. But, you know, if you want to nerd out, they're making 17 Big Macs every second. That's 55 million Big Macs in the US alone, and they're making them in over 100 countries.
Right.
So they control the process. They know the result of the process. It's a predictable result. Now, Matteo, I hope we get to have a barbecue one day.
Yeah.
Your place or my place. For those who don't know, that's a religion over in Uruguay. There's like soccer and barbecue. Those are the two things that we do. So if you come over and have a barbecue with me, and when I make burgers, it's not like McDonald's. It's very unpredictable results. Very unpredictable. Mostly yummy, but they're always messy. And no burger looks like the next.
Right.
Why? Because I don't control the process. And the thing is, you cannot improve what you don't control. And if you want to improve what you're doing, if you want to kind of, move the needle, then first you need to get rid of the variation. You need to have predictable results. But now, I'm bubbling off.
That's a perfect answer. So you transitioned from being a software developer into sales, and then you realized that, to scale or to improve the process, you had to think about it like an engineering, right? There was an input, there was a process, there was an output. And unless you control the process, you cannot scale, right? And if you control the process, you can reduce variation, improve quality, and improve the efficiency and the speed of the process, right? Did you always had that mindset? I mean, do you think that because you were an engineer first, you came into sales with that mindset already, or did you had any hard lessons, like you were trying to do something and it didn't work out, and you were like, "Why am I not using engineering mindset?"
Yes. It's when you fail that's sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, and of course it was the frustration of trying to scale a sales organization. I was for many years the chief revenue officer of a mid-sized SaaS company here in Germany. Mm-hmm. But also in other organizations and other roles, there were two things that was driving me. Number one, how can I scale it? How can I get more out of something? And the other thing was, I was obsessed with getting a bang for the buck. Right. Let me explain. I would literally come into the office every morning and stare at my desk and ask the question, what can I do today to move the needle?
Right.
Should I go over and train? The day has only so many hours. Should I go over and train my salespeople? Should I listen to sales recordings? Should I go over to the marketing people and look at their campaigns and their targeting? There are so many things that you can do, but which one moves the needle? And apart, from having opinion and troubleshooting things, I turn to data. Like I start staring at data and asking the question, well, what do I need to do? Is there an answer in the data? What do I need to do to really, what has the biggest impact?
Right.
Where is the bottleneck? Which Pareto, which 20% will move the needle by 80%? And in hindsight, it feels like I was standing there naked without any tools, just with my logical reasoning. I had no tools, and that feels very different today. We all have the fantastic tools that Jaco van der Kooi delivered with the revenue operational model. Excuse me, the recurring revenue operational model. And we have fantastic frameworks out there that we can use and apply so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Maybe this is an advantage if you're a programmer, then you're reluctant to reinvent the wheel every day.
Right.
And you try to reuse what others have out there, what is in public domain, and use libraries and components to save some time. So really, my advice, if there's anything I learned, is do not try to reinvent the wheel. Startup is so hard. Sales is so hard. There is no need to invent 80% yourself. Focus on the 20% that is really your core domain. And somebody said all SaaS companies taste like chicken because 80% of what they do is the same. Steal from others brutally and apply, established, proven concept that have been around, and don't jump on every new bandwagon. It's not AI ain't gonna solve your problem.
Right.
Math that has been around for 100 years will solve your problem.
Do you think sales teams are typically, I will use, allergic to being data driven? How do you see the state of the art today, right? How do and you're talking to a lot of customers and you are doing a little bit of education, right? Do you think there's a tendency from the sales guy that looks at his craft like an art, like, I close deals, etc., to be kind of wary of, okay, let's look at the process engineering data, or is that not the case? Is that just a myth? What's your view on that?
There are different roles and tasks in sales teams. The people on the ground are just too busy to dig through data. They have so many moving parts not to let deals slip, to make follow-ups, to be prepared for the next meeting, to hit their numbers. That's such a consuming role. They should be left alone doing their role. One thing that I see, and which I can now, thanks to the software that we developed and the customers who supplied us with their data, one thing that I can prove right now is putting sales team under end of quarter pressure is counterproductive. And I can show this in the data. We measure 4 attributes of the pipeline. We measure cycle time. How long does it take to close a deal? We measure deal size. How big are the deals? We measure loss rate, not win rate, but loss rate. How many deals do we lose? I'll explain later why this is an important distinction. And we measure wasted activities. Let me explain. In the lean sense of the word, waste is any activity that has no value for a customer. What better way for a customer to say this has no value for me as going like, yeah, I'm not buying.
Right.
That's the definition of, I'm not giving you money, it has no value. So in hindsight, if we look at all the meetings, all the follow-ups, all the phone calls, all the emails we've written and done for a deal that did not close successfully, that was wasted. Now, of course, we know this in hindsight, but if you increase the pressure on the team just because it's a week to the end of the quarter, what they will do is, and we see this in the data, the rate of waste skyrockets. They go just like, they know this deal ain't gonna close, but they need an excuse. So I just call him again. It's that you're burning your relationships. They keep digging, they keep pushing, and the effect is not what you want to have. Let's make a comparison. If you would have a process that produces a vaccine, and you would just, because it's end of quarter, and you have to deliver the number to your manager, and the manager to his board, and the board to his investors, if you would screw with the quality of your process, this is how you go to jail. Because you were trying to please your investors, you screwed up the quality of your process, and you poisoned 1 million people. We cannot do this in other industries. Think of, nuclear power plants, the aviation industry. In other industries, we don't have the luxury, to pressure our pilots or the operators of our nuclear power plants just because it's just the last week of the year. Come on, guys, fly faster. You cannot do this elsewhere. Why? Because it's not good for your bottom line. So I understand the pressure, and I understand that you have to motivate your team, but just increasing the pressure is not doing what you think it does.
And you talk a lot about Lean Six Sigma, and that's a big part of what you do, right? You're introducing Lean Six Sigma into revenue operations, and you're doing that in a very successful way, right? For the audience, some of them know what Lean Six Sigma is, some of them don't know. I know it's tough to describe it very shortly, but in short, what is Lean Six Sigma?
Yeah, so Lean Six Sigma is two things. It's lean production, and it's Six Sigma. Those are two very compatible systems or methods that do slightly different things. Lean tries to remove waste and bottlenecks from your processes. It's been developed by the Toyota Corporation. It's been around. We all know the Lean Startup. Eric Ries wrote the book. The Lean Startup describes a non-wasteful way of finding product market fit. I like to say Eric didn't write the second volume, the Lean Scale Up. Once you have product market fit, how do I scale this without waste? And right. I think we just went through a decade or so of wasting money and growing at all cost. The opposite of Lean, just hire more people, it doesn't matter, increase ad spend, we get money from our investors, whatever works, just let's grow. Well, that was very wasteful, and I think a lot of companies are paying the price right now. Six Sigma is a more mathematical, statistical approach that looks at process variations, that looks at the range of variations. And let me maybe illustrate this. If you look at if you're doing sales the way I do, I make burgers, then you have probably variations in your pipeline. You have big deals, you have small deals, you have fast deals, you have slow deals, and so forth. And you can pull a baseline and see which deals are above the baseline and which are below, and how far apart are they. And this gives you a range of variation. And then you have a distribution of this range. Do we make more big deals or more small deals, more fast deals, more slow deals? And if you look at this statistical so-called signals, you can find clusters of data that give you insight how to move this baseline to your advantage. Just imagine you find out which deals are, what is the correlation of very slow deals? and you just decide, well, we're not doing those anymore. Or what is the correlation between very fast deals? Oh, this industrial segment, let's do more of this. And the thing is that very modest improvement of the baseline have a huge effect on your bottom line. We see regularly, like a 1/10 improvement of the baseline, really marginal, has, for example, 1.8 million additional revenue that you're not making today, and that you could be making just by moving that baseline. I mean, I joke that our theme song should be, I like to move it, move it. Move the baseline, figure out what the baseline is, and figure out the correlations of the data points below and above, and then move the baseline.
Got it. You probably are not only helping companies utilize this methodology and framework, but you're probably doing, using it yourself, right? So my question would be, do you have an ideal customer? What does it look like? And who is your buyer persona, right? Who can you talk about all of this and will be more open to it, etc.? Size of company, type of company. Tell me a little bit about that.
Now, so that's a great question. That's a great question. Maybe before we dive in, so let me answer this way. You need to have a process in order to improve a process, right?
Right.
If you don't have processes because you're just starting out, then it's very hard to improve. That's the reason why systems like OKR or EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, are very difficult to implement in the very early stages, is that you're not there yet. Like EOS has a scorecard. If your scores are changing every week because you're measuring different things, then it doesn't make sense to have a scorecard.
Right.
So you need to have some processes. Now, process is a word that we use all the time, but I'm not always convinced everybody has a clear definition. What is a process? So we like to say every sequence of steps is a process. Not really. If you organize a birthday party for your kids, then this is a sequence of steps. It's not really a process. What's missing? Well, you have to do this repeatedly. So, okay, every sequence of step that you repeat is a process. Well, not so fast. Now you have from a checklist, that was, you do a party once. Now you have a standard operating procedure. You do this every year. So now you whip out this checklist from last year and you repeat this. It's still not a process. A process requires an input and an output. So any number of steps that take an input and transform it into an output is a process. So the first question to ask is, do you have that? If you look at your sales, at your lead generation, do you have a repeatable sequence of steps that takes ad spend, money, and produces leads, and you do this repeatedly? If you're still testing around and you're doing lead generation differently every week, then you don't have a process. There is nothing to optimize. Figure out what works, what can be repeated. The same goes for sales. If you try to do a presentation and then you do a demo and then you try to go product-led, then you haven't figured it out yet. But once you have a sequence of steps that transform an input into an output, now you have processes. And now it's important to make those processes as failure-free as possible so that you can scale and accelerate. One of these processes, the weakest of these processes, will break and will give you trouble. And there are two popular ways to react to trouble. The one, and I don't really understand why we are so proud if we are good at this, the one is the so-called troubleshooting.
Right.
So you have something that you do repeatedly, sales, well, taking leads, output is deals, and you have your method and so forth, but there's always trouble. Well, the reason for the trouble is process variations. You get unpredictable results and undesired results, else you wouldn't have to shoot troubles. How do you shoot troubles? Well, you use opinion, you use gut feeling, you use your authority because you're the sales leader, you use your experience because I've been doing this for 30 years, I know what I'm doing. Well, there is a name for this in Germany, we call it bad engineering. If you do good engineering, then you don't have to shoot troubles. There are no troubles. So the opposite of troubleshooting is actually quality engineering, and this is not looking at the results, but focusing on the root cause. Let me give you an example. We all are obsessed with our win rate. What we should be obsessed with, and this is my deep belief, we should be obsessed with our loss rate. Why? Because the win rate is a result. If we have a high win rate, we don't understand why. If you would have a factory that makes refrigerators, you would not look at the 95 refrigerators that left your factory intact, working. You would look at the 5 that were dead on arrival. What did we do wrong? This is how you should look at your sales process. Focus on the lost deals and figure out what went wrong. If you focus on the won deals, on the success rate, if you will, on the win rate, I like to compare this to driving a car by only looking through the rear mirror. You see what happened behind you, the results, but you never understand, why did we crash all this car? Why did we kill all those people? Now we just keep driving over people. Why? Look out the front window, figure out the cause.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
And by the way, we are also, all our organizations, we are all super obsessed with revenue. Super obsessed with revenue. And there's even the term, our revenue goals. Well, let me tell you this. Revenue is not a goal. Revenue is a metric with which we measure the efficiency of our revenue processes. If we have a highly efficient revenue process, then this produces a lot of revenue. But it's really surprising how difficult it is for us, and I include myself, for us to, in our daily tactical, down in the trenches, to tell cause from effect.
Right.
Revenue is a result. By the way, sales quota is a result. You're measuring results. You have no idea why somebody is attaining sales quota. And if you have a sales team where some are consistently attaining sales quota and some are not, and your explanation is only, well, he sucks, then you're not looking for the root causes. If you go to McDonald's and order a Big Mac, it's not like the 5 people who work there, the shift. There are 2 who are good at making Big Macs. Everyone can make a Big Mac. And trust me, making a Big Mac is not more complex than selling whatever it is that you sell.
So it seems that your ideal customer is someone that already has a process.
To answer your question, I'm so sorry.
No, you did. It's someone that already, let me see if I got it right.
Yeah.
In order to improve a process, you need to have a process. If you are too young of a company and you are figuring things out, you don't yet have a process, right? So talking about Lean Six Sigma and improving your process might be too soon. The same way that implementing OKRs or EOI might be too soon, right?
Yeah. The framework that you want to look at this stage is so-called DOA, design of experiment.
Perfect. Now, your ideal customer is someone that has a process and needs to scale and has been around for a while, and when you can look at the process and improve the process. So there's a certain size of the company and they already have product market fit. They already have been around for a while and they have a certain size of a sales team. Would you say that would be your typical customer?
Yeah, so we could put numbers on this. Usually, if you're under 100 people in team size, you're still figuring things out.
Okay.
It depends on the organization. Sometimes 50 people teams are only highly processized. Sometimes you have teams with 150 people where they are just, the variations are still super high. Because, here's the difference between a startup and McDonald's. If you have product market fit, then you figured out how to make a burger that people actually want to eat.
Right.
The kitchen is a mess. The results are different, but people are coming, they're lining up because word is out. Matteo is making amazing vegan burgers. It's the place to go. Now you need to do what McDonald's did over the last 60 years with the Big Mac. Reduce variation, optimize the process. Because chances are you cannot do 17 per second when you're at that stage. So if you want to scale this up, because you can decide not to grow, then you're going to die, but that's a fair decision. The reason why you have to grow is because the economy constantly grows, and if you don't grow, then you become relatively smaller and you're dying. So you have to. The stock market is growing on 9%. You have to grow at 10, else you're dying. So if you want to figure this out, then the size is usually between 100 and 500. I'll explain why not over 500 right now. And I love recurring revenue because you don't have only the sales process, you have the right part of the bow tie. You have the churn and the onboarding and the impact and the expand, upsell, cross-sell, renewal process. That's like a whole second world of sales right there where you can optimize the process. And it's actually, it doesn't get enough fame, if you ask me. It's actually the more interesting part and the more lucrative part, because existing customers don't have customer acquisition cost. They are free. So if you can expand your customers, if you can reduce churn rate, if you can improve the processes there, that's cash right there on the table. You can just put it in a suitcase and leave.
Got it. Why no more than 500?
Well, not more than 500 right now, because beyond 500, organizations start to become dysfunctional. They are not doing any real work anymore themselves. They outsource everything to consultants and outsourcing companies and so forth. And the second thing is, once you have grown to 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 people, your processes should be already highly optimized. Maybe not the way the Big Mac, but a lot more. So we still can produce a lift. We still can increase the gain, but the ratio is not that high. Right now, we find companies, we analyze their pipeline. And by the way, for the listeners, hit me up. Basic performance audit of your pipeline is for free. Connecting your CRM takes 2 minutes, and you have the result the next day, and you see how much money you could be making or how much money you're losing and where the problems are. we see companies coming in, and we have, I give you an example. The last 20 or so pipelines that we analyzed had an annual cost of variation, of process variation, of $761,000.
Wow.
On average, they are losing 30% of their revenue to process variations. And there it's a significant help that we can provide. For a startup that has an ARR of 4 million, adding 1.8 million in ARR is a game changer.
Yep.
For a company that makes 100 million, the 1.8 million that we increase, or even 2 or even 3, is still nice to have. It's still, $1 million is $1 million. But it's not like the CEO is not going to call me, go like, I love you, man. I love you.
Right.
So this is the sweet spot that we are looking at right now.
Very good. Steven, you lived in various countries, right? You lived in the US, in Germany, Uruguay, and some other countries as well. Do you see different business mindsets in the different countries that you have lived in?
I love this question. I love this question. I had a short stint at the University of Palo Alto for postgraduates with a dear friend together. We were doing courses on cultural differences in the business world.
Right.
And he was arguing that this is a big thing, and my job was to argue it's a small thing. So I can argue both sides.
Okay.
Here are my core beliefs. I live in a small village, really small village on the countryside, maybe 30 kilometers east of Stuttgart. There is literally nothing I have in common with my neighbors. Nothing. We try to be nice on the street to each other, but we have nothing to talk about, except for one who is a ex-retired engineer from Mercedes-Benz. And he is also a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. So I can have that qualified conversation with him. But with the rest of the neighbors, I have nothing to talk about. When I go to Hong Kong, or when I go to Dublin, or to Warsaw, or to Montevideo on a startup pitch contest, and then have the networking session afterwards, everybody is my friend. Everybody has the same things that are frustrating by. We have the same jokes, the same way to see things. We are super interconnected, and we probably, whoever I meet, we have 20 shared contacts on LinkedIn. So I would argue, don't bother all that much about cultural differences. Now, having said this, let me invalidate this and switch hats. Cultural differences are a bitch. If you're selling something, like I talk to people and I ask them, well, how did you set up your sales organization for Germany? Oh, we have a European headquarters in the UK. Well, good luck with that. You ain't gonna sell shit here in Germany if this is your approach. There are differences. They're in the detail. They're in the tonality, and they might make or break it. So I think the antidote to failure here is diversity. Have a diverse team. If you have a team only of US Americans who have never worked and lived abroad, you might become, and no matter how diverse it is there, you might become blind to certain things that you're doing wrong because it just doesn't occur in your mind. But having, and we live in a beautiful world, we can have this easily. Have a distributed team, have a team from different places in the world. Let them have foster a culture of contributing and criticizing, so that even, your virtual assistant from Bosnia gets to have a say in the morning meeting, and go like, yeah, that wouldn't fly around here. Even if you don't agree, maybe, it's the occasion to reflect real quick on this. And, well, maybe we shouldn't take this for granted.
I loved the answer. I loved how you make it a two-part answer. I would have enjoyed being on that class that you gave. That sounds like a very fun and amazing class. So thank you for that. If someone is listening and they want to get in touch with you, and you mentioned that, how do they go about that? Do they shoot you an email? Is there anything?
Oh, I'm super approachable. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I answer. Like I even answer every single SDR who is reaching out. Usually they're outsourcers. I'm super approachable on LinkedIn. It's easy to get to my email. I answer emails. I even answer badly written cold pitches. I very often write back, go like, I'm interested. What's your reply rate? Are you happy with this? Let's have a chat. I'm not a lead. I ain't gonna buy, but we can trade notes. So yeah, it's really easy to reach out to me. LinkedIn is probably the easiest, and then jaxx.ai is the website. You can find me there as well.
Very well. One last question, Steven. What do you do when you're not working?
Oh man. So I'm a terrible but very passionate golf player. I'm a terrible but very passionate whitewater kayaker. And I'm a skiing instructor. Fun fact. I have a certification, German certification as a skiing instructor. So all year round, I like to be outside. And, I make very yummy but very messy burgers. So
we gotta do that. There's an invitation. There's an open invitation here that was, we have a lot of witnesses here that there's an open invitation. You either come to Montevideo or I go there to Germany, 30 kilometers outside of Stuttgart, and we do something, right? And we make your neighbors jealous.
You're welcome anytime. Let me share with the audience, you probably can relate to this. When I moved to Uruguay, I had a rooftop with a huge barbecue grill.
Right.
Which my Uruguayan friends did not let me use myself for the first 2 years because they were, no, you don't know how to do this. So whenever I invited people over, they would just go away from the barbecue, we do this. And this is how I learned to barbecue.
Nice. You've been to the best school that there is. Steven,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I really look forward to our next conversation. And it's been really an honor and a pleasure.
Matteo, it was a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. All the best over to Montevideo, and talk soon.